time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. On Tuesday this week, President Bola Tinubu declared a state of emergency in Rivers State. This follows a prolonged political crisis in the state. In a nationwide broadcast, the president situated his action on relevant constitutional provisions. He announced the suspension of Governor Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy Ngozi Odu, and all the members of the Rivers State House of Assembly for an initial period of 6 months. The president also nominated retired Vice Admiral Ibok Etebas and as sole administrator to take charge of the affairs of the state.
It has become inevitably compelling for me to invoke the provision of the Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State with effect from today, 18th March, year 2025, and I so do. By this declaration, the governor of Rivers State, Mr. Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy, Mrs. Ngozi Odu, and all elected members of the House of Assembly state are hereby suspended for an initial period of 6 months. In the meantime, I hereby nominate Vice Admiral Ibok Etebas, retired, as administrator to take charge of the affairs of the state in the interests of the good people of Rivers State.
Now, of course, I'm looking forward to that conversation that's going to come up on this conversation, because there's always that one story every single week, and I would say this has been the story of the week. There's so many different angles to it, but I think that a lot of opinion are tilting towards the same thing, that this is unconstitutional, and this just basically erodes the whole ideology of separation of powers. So I'm really looking forward to discussing the legal issues around the president's decision, because I think it's important for us to not only emphasize what the issues are, but also look forward to ask ourselves, okay, so what next? Because I think that's what we do a lot of. We often highlight the issues, but then what happens afterwards? Do we just highlight them and just hurrah and go to bed? I'm interested in, just getting to know what this means if there was a possible solution that could come out of this.
So am I. I mean, AJ Wonikoku SAN, of course, is very learned
Yes.
and a brilliant lawyer too. I recall the role that he played for Lagos State during the NSAS. It was part of the, legal team and everything. And, and his submissions were always very, on point and apt. But of course, you also know that many people have waded in on this matter, professors, lawyers, SAN,
Yes.
Practically everybody. Everybody, seems to have an opinion. But I think that the issues deserve the sort of, avalanche of opinions that are coming in. Because if you recall, the last time that word crept into the Nigerian landscape was about 12 years ago in 2013, when President Goodluck Jonathan declared a state of emergency
Over insecurity
in about 3 states in Nigeria, Borno, Adamawa, and I believe Yobe.
Yeah.
But of course, he didn't go as far as suspending the democratic institutions in those states. He didn't suspend the governor or the deputy governor and the state House of Assembly. But of course, if you go back to 2004 and 2006, that was the time before 2013 that it really said again that we had a situation, unfortunate situation in Nigeria by the same president. The difference between what Obasanjo did in 2004 and 2006 and what President Tinubu has done will be that it didn't happen in the first term of Obasanjo. His first term was 1999 to 2003. Of course, you can say that the situation that warranted those things didn't happen in his first term. But here we have President Tinubu has not done 2 years, but then is dealing with a situation where it says he's now forced to rely on Section 305 of the Constitution, which gives presidents emergency powers, if he thinks that the issues on ground follow the stipulations of the Constitution. If there's war, if there's violence, if the governor has failed, to invite the president to intervene in a situation that appears dire. 3 quick things for me, Kachi. One will be to condemn the suspension of democratic institutions, of democratic governance in Rivers State.
Yes.
The preponderance of opinion is that by many people's understanding of the Constitution, particularly Section 305, and a few others where, it is stated how a governor can be removed, nobody can confidently say that any president, particularly democratically elected president, has the powers to either remove or suspend another governor that was elected just like him or the lawmakers. But here we are dealing with a situation where the president is saying that I'm left with no other option. And he gave a number of reasons. People are challenging his reasons. No matter how you look at it, it really shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened that a president who once described himself as the father of all Democrats will resort to suspending a democratically elected governor or lawmakers and the deputy governor. But then there are 2 other issues that have to be considered, which is why what you said about the SAN coming in today will be important. Will also be to examine further the reasons that the president gave. What really are we dealing with when we're talking Section 305, particularly once that has been invoked and the president says that, okay, emergency rule has been declared. Can he hide whatsoever? Can he hide under that emergency rule situation to therefore says, because the law it seems to suggest that there can be a suspension of the norm when that happens, and then go further to say that the governor cannot preside over the affairs of the state because he's directly instrumental to the reasons why things are dire in Rivers State. Are the things that the president mentioned, do they qualify? It's left to analysts to sincerely, intervene. We know, of course, that Rivers State has been in slow motion towards anarchy. And I think that he got to a head, which was probably the reason why President had to intervene, given the role, given the importance of Rivers State when it comes to the economic life wire of Nigeria, oil production. And we saw within 24 hours how, flash attacks were made. People can argue and say that, but then, the installations came back almost immediately. But we do not know how, the information that the president had is the commander-in-chief. He deals with, intelligence and everything. So we won't know the amount of information at his disposal to arrive at that. But we also saw that the governor cannot, in all sincerity, be seen as just a victim in all this, given the weight of the utterances that he made over time, particularly leading to the time just before the state of emergency was declared, when he did say, surprisingly, alarmingly to many people, that when it came to the time, he would let the youths know when they would be needed to intervene. And of course, I think that the Attorney General made a reference to that point that the governor said that, that was a direct threat to the Nigerian state. That was a direct threat, to the economic life wire of Nigeria, even though the governor has denied and said that he had nothing to do with blowing up of oil installations and stuff. The third part of my quick intervention will be those who are now promoters of democracy, particularly those who were either part of the Obasanjo government, like Atiku was as vice president, or those who were part of Jonathan government in one form or the other, who sanctioned the state of emergencies that were declared at that time. On what basis is Vice President Atiku now saying that, democratic institution, blah, blah. I agree that that's the proper thing to do. But you were number 2 when twice in 2 years the former president of Nigeria, not only declared a state of emergency, but removed, in similar fashion, the governors, and installed, ex-retired military men, just like Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done. Two wrongs can make a right, and what should be of importance now is what is the way out? Two things, in my opinion. People are going to court. The PDP governors are going to court. Individuals are going to court. We will ask Uwonikoko, do they have locus, given what happened in 2004 when Darie in Plateau was removed and the Attorney General of the state had to go to court? It got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the sole administrator that was appointed by the president never approved of anything, and he was the only one who had locus on behalf of the state, for such a thing to do. So these are interesting times. These are desperate times. They do not look good at all for democracy, but then maybe somehow it also provides just a little window of opportunity to reset the whole issue around Rivers State crisis, given the fact that the Supreme Court had given its judgments, on the situation of the local government election and the 27 lawmakers. You can have a state that only 3 or 4 lawmakers for long will be passing budgets, will be passing commissioners, etc. I just think that the governor will have to consider the possibility of stooping to conquer in all this. Again, it is important to highlight that, yes, this is not good for democracy. The act itself is condemnable. But then, do desperate times, as they say, warrant or deserve desperate situations?
I think
it's still a bit cloudy, isn't it?
I think it still boils, you've raised everything, very valid issues that exist. But the question still remains, does this warrant a state of emergency? And I think it's important to note this, that history or precedence does not in any way stand close to or invalidate the grand norm or the rule of law. Whatever has happened before in history or has been a precedent that has been set or something that another president has done, the fact is everybody is still, it's right there in Section 1, subsection 2. The Federal Republic of Nigeria shall not be governed, nor shall any person or group of persons take control of the government of Nigeria or any part thereof, except in accordance with the provision of the Constitution, whether in 2003, 2004, 2013, or 2025. And I think that's the first point to note in all of this. The constitutionality of this issue is really what people are asking. Granted, when there are these issues, what were the steps taken? Was there any form of dialogue? I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned what Governor Fubara had said, but was that in response to a second type of issue? Where's the role of Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, in all of this? So the ball of contention here is, on one hand, there's the issues that are going on in Rivers State. And while that is not unlike any issue we've seen happen in any other state in terms of conflict, the reason this conversation is about to happen is a state of emergency has been declared. I would also like the SAN to clarify what a state of emergency implies. Does it mean that if somebody, maybe somebody's rights is infringed on, does the person have the right to go to court, for instance, in the midst of a state of emergency? It's important to clarify the severity of what that means.
Rights are suspended on the state of emergency.
My point exactly. I mean, I know that. I know that very well, but I think it's important that people understand why the state of emergency is such a bone of contention. And whether or not the president did this in accordance with the law, that is it. Whatever issue was happening in Rivers and he responded, that's granted. Conflicts happen. Right now, we're about to talk about the U.S. sanction in Nigeria as a result of religious killings. We're also going to look at protests that are happening as a result of Fulani herdsmen killings. There is financial insecurity, food insecurity as well. There's conflict. That's granted. But the issue is, when you now take the power to say this is going to be a state of emergency, is it constitutional or not? That gives us an idea of where we are as a country. So if government is no longer for the people, of the people, by the people, it's important Nigerians are made aware so proper decisions can begin to be made as to, okay, what next? This is where we are. So I think that's really what the bone of contention is. There's nothing according to what the NBA said as well. It's even happened in the case of, I have to get this properly, the Attorney General of Bendel State and Adeyo, where it was established that any act of government not covered under a governing law is a nullity. There's several sections of the Constitution that include how a governor is to be elected and removed. Several sections that just raised question marks. So the question is the Constitution now just a book that we just talk about? Or is it still the grand norm? Where is the place of separation of powers, for instance?
The Constitution allows for the president
under
to declare...
what conditions? That's the problem.
It's properly spelled out.
It is properly spelled out. And again, the NBA has stated that this is wrong, that this should not be happening.
That's
the Nigerian
opinion,
Bar Association
is an important opinion.
Is seemingly what we look up to when we say, this is the governing body of the lawyers in Nigeria. It takes, give or take, 6 years to become a proper lawyer in Nigeria. So after spending that amount of time, we have SANs. Exactly, you want to get there. The Nigerian Bar Association has said this is wrong. So if they have said that, we're now not going to argue with the lawyers who have spent hours, understanding what these issues are, dissecting the Constitution to say, well, maybe there was something that could have happened there. So I think the issue around this...
Not all the lawyers agree, though.
Of course, there's always going to be room.
Agree, though.
There's always going to be room for...
dissensions,
but the fact still remains the fact. It's okay if it's, this is not the first time something would happen in Nigeria that is unconstitutional, and we just kind of just gloss over it. But the fact is, it must be established that this is right, this is wrong, this is unconstitutional. So we need to understand, that's why...
I think it's the constitutionality of it that is important. Right or wrong may be
subjective. You're correct. Maybe that's not the word. Right or wrong could be subjective, but the constitutionality of this decision, and most importantly, how it affects the people.
Absolutely.
Because these are the people that put the man in power. The man was not placed in power. The man was duly elected. How does it affect the people? The Ijaw Youth Council have come out to say that they feel this is a direct attack at them. It's not off of... Of course they will feel so. It's not just based off of the state of emergency announcement. It's over a series of incidents that have led up to the state of emergency. The president, what a lot of people expected him to do in this, is to put people together. The truth is Nigerians are tense right now, especially for the youth in the country. There's a trend going on Twitter, 30 days of ranting, where people are just ranting because it's social media. But I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has a responsibility.
Are they ranting yet about the state of emergency?
Are they ranting about this? They're ranting about everything. They're ranting about everything as it. That's why it's called 30 Days of Rant. So it's individual issues. What issues affect you? So if it affects you, you rant about it. But like I was saying, I think he has a responsibility to say, possibly after the next 2 years, maybe if the next elections are favorable, he gets to do another 4 years. But this is legacy and this is history. The next couple of years are going to cement that legacy permanently, because I do not think there will be another opportunity to try. When we talk about the great leaders, when we talk about the fact that some people are writing books, we're about to talk about a man who just passed at 82, to ask ourselves salient questions about his legacy. After President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's term, what will be his legacy? Will it be based on flouting terms of the Constitution, or will it be based on upholding human rights and the rule of law? The beauty is he is the president and owes no one any explanation, and that's a fact. But the truth is, he does. I was about to get there. He does owe us an explanation. There is the duty of accountability. When I say he doesn't owe us an explanation, I mean there are issues that have happened that we got.
What really can we do?
That we didn't hear anything. There was just total silence, But in this case, we've seen him come out to speak. And I think that was very, very interesting to see and commendable, and would like to see more of the president addressing issues like this. However, the verdicts that come out of these situations, there must be accountability and there must be respect, because if at that level of governance there is no respect, what can the poor masses do in the smaller, in faces like the local government sects? At that point in time, we're all doomed. So I think that's why the conversation we're about to have is very, very important, and I really think that the president takes it into consideration.
Absolutely. Just a very quick one before we move on to the next story. Will be the interesting, game that politicians play when it comes to issues like this. You will have politicians who were in the opposition and will condemn certain things when they were in the opposition, and then they get to power. They do exactly the same thing that they condemn. And then those who are in power, previously, who are now out of power, who are now in the opposition, will now condemn what those who are now
Isn't that just sad? Like it feels like we're playing sway with Nigerians.
Which is why we must constantly interrogate, seriously, when people flaunt, democratic, credentials, and to say that, oh, this is because of democracy and people. When you were there,
but that's not the issue,
speak?
though.
It's part of the issue.
No,
actually,
let me tell you why that may not
opinion.
be part of the issue.
Yeah.
It may not be part of the issue because if we keep looking at situations for, well, when you were there, you didn't do this. For instance, last week we spoke about Malam El-Rufai and his decision to move on because seemingly he may be peeved about not getting a position as expected. If we keep looking at what you should have done when you were there, we're never going to move on. We need to tackle issues based on its individuality and its instance. If it's happening now, let's deal with it. The reason why this keeps on happening is because there is no accountability. Nothing will happen, and that is a norm. So as far as anybody who's watching the show is concerned, we're just two people discussing issues, and we're going to move right on to something else because last week there was a separate issue. Have you heard about it this week? Nope.
That's how it works. That's why you can't forget, the need never to forget and always tie issues together is very important.
But can we go back and make those people accountable for what they did?
Because they are still part of the polity now. Because they are still relevant now, and they are saying things that are different from what they did before. The same way that we are saying that President Bola Tinubu, who condemned, 3 times, twice under Obasanjo and once under Jonathan, the declaration of state of emergency is now making the same mistake. And that's why it's condemnable. The same way those who were part of the decisions to declare state of emergency then, who are now condemning the one now, they are both, guilty. So
I believe that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can set a new precedent.
Yeah.
Of course. Start something new.
Of course.
Something we have never seen before.
All right.
That will be interesting.
Absolutely. Let's move on. Sometimes last week, it was widely reported that the United States was contemplating sanctions against a number of countries, including Nigeria, for their inability or refusal to rein in promoters of religious violence and creating the conditions for maiming and killing of Christians. Almost immediately, the Nigerian government, through its functionaries, debunked the story and reasserted the often repeated official position that Nigeria is a secular nation with an exemplary record in upholding the fundamental rights of every citizen, irrespective of religious leaning or orientation. Interesting thing happening there, given the fact that the House Committee, on Foreign Affairs, made submissions and even looked at some reports in the observatory, I believe, detailing what they perceive to be not just injustice, but the killings of Christians in many parts of the world, including and possibly especially Nigeria. And you know why many people will seem to be worried? Will be because even in the first term of President Donald Trump, he did raise similar issues. I recall when former President Buhari went to see him on state visit, part of the things that he raised with him, first and foremost at that time, was to say, why are Christians being killed in your country? Of course, Buhari offered his explanations to say this is this nature of the war that we are fighting and we're doing our best, to curtail it. Christians are not necessarily being targeted, even though they are dying. But then the federal government is doing its best to curtail it. It is the same tone, interestingly, that the federal government has adopted in responding to the sanctions that the House in America has now passed, to President Donald Trump to say, you need to wade in here. You will need to sanction this country because this thing has continued for many years. Of course, the response was to say, the part that I found, a bit concerning was the part where they say, Christians are not being targeted. As a matter of fact, more Muslims are dying. And I think we mentioned in the last week or about 2 weeks ago, or they're about to say that maybe this is not the way to communicate. What is the duty of government when your people are dying? Don't identify Christians and Muslims. Safeguard the lives and property of people and justify to the world, not just to the United States of America, what you are doing to curtail it. Because when people hear of the number of people, the atrocities that happen in southern Kaduna, especially in Benue Plateau, up till last year, in many parts of the Southeast, we discussed the Enugu matter, just last week. What happened in Ondo State when a church, on Christmas Day was attacked and scores of people died. Maybe it is here that we are not taking judicious notice. We talk about stuff, but some people are detailing what is happening, especially where it concerns and affects human lives. I think that this is the reason why Americans or the American government functionaries are saying that, no, we shouldn't allow this kind of a thing to continue. Nigerian government must respond in a way that will be convincing. And conviction will not come from saying, oh, Muslims too are dying. No, because those who are raising points now are Christians. And don't also forget that President Trump, part of the reason why he has returned to power this time around was because of the huge support from the Christians and the evangelicals who were opposed to many things, including the LGBTQ things and all those issues that they consider to be against the Christian values. So when they hear, on the one hand, that Christians are dying, and then they hear that the government, I don't want to go to the route of Muslim ticket, who are the leaders in the country and things like that, which are non-issues here to an extent. But then to an outsider who keeps hearing that people are dying and that there are Christians like him, this sort of intervention becomes inevitable. And therefore, Nigerian government will have to be a lot tidier in making responses and in demonstrating to the international community that is trying its best to safeguard lives and property. I'm not sure that we're doing enough that will satisfy the scrutiny of many people who think that people are dying needlessly.
Yeah, and I think the fact that I think the essence of this sanction is primarily to say that we don't want any more responses, just fix the problem. I think that's something that's meant to.
It's a recommendation at this point.
Yeah, it's a recommendation. That's what it would mean.
If we can bear it,
if we can bear what now?
The sort of sanctions that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That I believe that it is to say, listen, stop giving us responses, because these are not things that we can continue to make excuses for. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the point to be made here. We cannot continue to make excuses for this thing. The next story is on the same issue, still on the theme of violence. Angry protesters on Wednesday in Akure, the Ondo state capital, blocked the entrance to the governor's office over the killing of 5 farmers by suspected armed headsmen. Now, this tragedy comes a week after 4 communities in Akure North local government area of the state were attacked by some armed men suspected to be bandits, leading to the death of over 20 people, as well as the abduction of 9 others in Akure. In the latest incident, it was learned that the farmers were shot dead in another invasion by armed herdsmen at Aba Oibo power line axis in Akure North local government area of the state. Angered by the unfortunate incident, the protesters stormed the governor's office and displayed the bodies of the casualties of the invasion. It's frustrating. It's exhausting. These are not chickens or goats or animals. These are human beings. Yeah. So when the only response that gets to them is a response to say, oh, we're working on this, or I don't even have any comment on this. I don't think there's anything to be said. It's just a pathetic situation, and it's heartbreaking, because for us, we can sit here and talk about it, but for them, they're living in a constant state of violence. These are Nigerians, the same Nigerians as Nigerian as you are, and as Nigerian as I am, with the same fundamental human rights, but clearly with very different accesses, having to live in a constant state of violence, while dialogue and information is being traded on how to stop that. Not to just throw shade, but when we're calling for a state of emergency in a state where we're still asking for physical, actual evidence of violence and anarchy. So I really don't have much to say about this.
I get your point totally, Kachi. This sort of thing can be very frustrating. It's not the type of news that you want to comment on, on a daily basis. As a journalist who write, or you used to write, a weekly column, sometimes I will look at the stuffs that I addressed in my writings 15, 18, 20 years ago. And I'll look at today, we're still dealing with the same madness.
I know.
And it can be
How does
very
that feel? Honestly.
just the same way that you felt now, like, what else are we going to say?
I can't imagine how that
What
would
else are we
feel.
going to write? And so when I see other people, colleagues and senior colleagues, doing this like twice a week, and I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, people must be commended for their investment in this Nigerian project, because
I like what you called it. This Nigerian, I love that. This is truly a Nigerian project.
Absolutely, because sometimes it just can be very frustrating. And that's the point of what we saw, in Ondo. Whether you're dealing with Enugu, or Ondo, or Kaduna, or Plateau, or Benue, or anywhere where there are issues, it's the same thing. Human lives are at stake. People are dying. Why are they dying? Because we still have not dealt with the issues sufficiently about farmer-herders clash. Thousands, if not millions of people in the last, let's even say since democracy started in Nigeria, or since 2009, when such clashes, got worse, we will have lost hundreds of thousands of people to this same thing. And therefore we see president come and say, oh, we will address it. This is the way, this is how we will address it. We'll deal with the issues of livestock, or we will ban open grazing. The same thing that predecessors said, the same thing that the members of the National Assembly previously said. But what really are we doing? When did others became terrorists, that they carry AK-47, that they can invade people's farms and villages, shoot at people, kill them, rape women, and they go scot-free? Okay, there are arguments to say that, instead of killing cows and dealing with them if they stray into your farms, maybe there are ways to. Why should they, in this age and time, have hordes of cows straying into people's farms, all the way from wherever they are coming from, and straying into people's farms? I think that we are not being sincere enough. We're dealing with this issue, and sadly, we're spilling blood, and many people keep dying. It ties neatly to the issue of why American politicians are saying, no, let's take an interest in Nigeria. If we apply sanctions, maybe their government would do
The needful.
a whole lot more. Because it is obvious that they are not doing enough to the satisfaction of people to put a permanent end to farmers or people generally dying as a result of farmer-herders clashes. And so you can appreciate, you can and sympathize too with the people who went to the governor's office in Ondo to say that, hey, protect us. That's why you are there. That's why we made you governor. Protect us. If you can't feed us well, if we're dealing with 23% inflation that we had to use some abracadabra to bring down, from whatever. If we're dealing with no subsidy in fuel, if we are not part of the gang that are asking for dollars and stuff like that, but at least protect us. Because all that we do is to go to farm and feed our family and do little things that will just keep us alive. And they're not asking for too much, to be sincere.
But
why, therefore, are we allowing them to keep on dying on a daily basis?
I think, and that now begs the question, protect them from who?
Those who are killing them.
Who are killing them?
The herders, they say.
So is it that hard to control the herders? That must be such a tall ask.
You're back to ground zero.
Exactly.
The same
back
thing.
to ground
The
zero
same
on
thing.
the issue.
You will, imagine that ordinarily it ought not to be this difficult. If they are Nigerians like the rest, if there's intelligence to say this is the reason, and if
there is intelligence.
There ought to be.
Of course. Have you forgotten that they said it was intelligence that made them know there was problems in rivers? There's intelligence.
Okay, so maybe the intelligence is not very intelligent
in
enough.
certain states.
Yeah. All right. Let's hope that Nigeria will be better, particularly in the areas of killings, or needless killings that we keep on witnessing. We move on. The Federal High Court in Lokoja has issued an interim injunction restraining the Independent National Electoral Commission from accepting or acting on any petition seeking to initiate a recall process against Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, pending the determination of a motion on notice. The ruling bars INEC, its staff, and agents from receiving any petition containing fictitious signatures of purported members of Kogi Central Senatorial District, or conducting a referendum based on such a petition. The court's decision followed an ex parte application for interim injunction, supported by an affidavit of extreme urgency and sworn to by Anebe Jacob Ogirima and 4 others, all registered voters and constituents of Kogi Central Senatorial District. Following the ruling, the case has been adjourned to May 6, 2025. Senator Natasha is still in the news.
Yes, she is.
If we're not hearing about her, granting interviews to BBC, to different other people, we're hearing about the fact that some constituents want to recall her because they are claiming that she's not doing what she was elected, to do in representing them, Kogi Central, at the Senate. The interesting thing is that at every point in time, the courts has always intervened, which is what you get in a civilized society. The latest will be what many people will call the kangaroo recall process, and I think that Arise did a brilliant, a brilliant report the other time, zooming in on those who claim, that they are part of the process of recalling her. And we could see, from that process that many of the women there didn't even know why they were there. Some say that, they were just called to come and, to come and collect empowerment, and that they should appear, at the headquarters where they will need, they needed to be counted and they need to sign and everything. Which of course, shows that what is happening in Kogi is politically motivated. And I think that the senator should continue to fight. I'm not so sure how the interviews abroad, from United Nations, interparliamentary thing, and then BBC and a few other interviews will ultimately help in returning her to the Senate, or in protecting her if there are genuine constituents who feel disappointed by her conduct. I totally agree that yes, she must be heard, she must never be silent. But of course, when things like this happen, the legal way and then the political way. Those who are saying that, 6 months is too much, blah, blah, I think we're past gone about 2 weeks now, which ordinarily ought to be what you apply if you're just trying to, exert discipline on an erring lawmaker. But here we are, the courts are intervening. The other time when the courts said that the case regarding misconduct and every other thing shouldn't go on, the same court has now set that aside. The committee on ethics in the Senate can proceed and deal with it. Are we likely to witness that in this recall process too, when the court will say, stop, you do not have the right until we have determined the motion on notice. And then later on, they'll say, you can go ahead. And even now, without not being in Nigeria, it will just be announced that Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has been recalled and has left the Senate. Interesting political game coming out of Kogi State. It's not the best of news that you want to be dealing with. The woman should continue to speak her truth. But of course, the law should also apply where necessary, either on the floor of the Senate or at the courts where all these things have been tested. This is what we're faced with.
It is, and I think that's exactly why I think at this point in time, she's fully aware of what she stands to lose in all of this and the realities on ground. And when she goes on those, interviews, she goes internationally to begin to tell her story, it's clearly because she needs to be heard. Because for posterity's sake, it must be understood, however this turns out, it must be understood what the issues are. And she hasn't said anything different from what she said on Arise News or what she even openly said on the floor of the Senate. It's still the same issue that she would like to be addressed. But it's interesting how we're addressing, in Nigeria, we're addressing every other issue, but we're addressing the calls for her recall, we're addressing her suspension, but the main bone of contention here, the Senate has moved on. For instance, they've moved on with its activities. The Senate president moved on with it, but we are still talking about her. And we're still talking about the fact that she is still trying to be heard. So can we really say she should not? What is the essence of not being silenced if you're going to be systemically silenced at the end of the day? We might say it, she should not be silenced, but she is being systemically silenced at the end of the day because one way or the other, we are deviating. There are now bigger issues, seemingly bigger issues that we are now dealing with, where this at some point in time will become what the bone of contention is, ensuring that she still retains her seat in the Senate. That may now be the focus. And then at the end of the day, her allegations will become a side note. So I think that's what she's trying to avoid, and that's why she keeps on speaking. And I think it's still important to say that this can all just come to an end if it can just be looked into.
I think her allegations will be addressed once she returns to the Senate.
In 6 months.
Well, we don't know when.
The condition for her return is also that she must apologize.
Yes, but apologize based on the misconduct, not on the allegations of sexual harassment.
Was that specified?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
So she's only apologizing for the misconduct, for not moving her seat. But then she's not supposed to recall her allegations?
Oh, no, because she has already tendered a petition from her constituent. She made a mistake.
So you're saying that basically in the next 6 months, she can come back to the Senate and bring it up again and continue her fight?
Absolutely, because she has tendered a petition, and the petition won't go away. The petition won't go away. And if she returns to the Senate, she'll say, Mr. Senate President, I did present a petition when I was here. Should I represent it, or can it now be addressed? And at which point she will now be required, of course, just like the person that she has been accused of, to be interrogated, to provide evidence and stuff like that. What will be important at that time will be that she will have to prove all the allegations, that she has raised.
In the next 6 months.
Yeah.